Well, it was always messing and tinkering, was learning as we was going along. Because remember, there was no hip hop scene before. We was embracing it as it came in. So we was the guinea pigs for, who was going to embrace it and move it forward. So we was all kind of learning our craft as we was going along. And if back then, if you was into hip hop, there was so many different kind of career paths, if you like, you could take, and everybody kind of would try something, find something they loved, and then stick with that. You know what I'm saying? So people would rap, people would, graffiti, people would break, people would pop, people would, DJ, and eventually you'd find your corner and, hone into something that suits you personally. For me, it was making beats, It was always making beats. So that meant that you would experiment with spitting some bars, You would try a thing. And I remember my first tune I can remember making was a track produced by DJ S called I'm Your Shadow. I think that was 85 possibly, 86. Nah, he tested me. I'd have to check to yes and find out what year it was, because he still got all those tunes. But that was my first tune. So back then, because we was just, doing it on the street, there wasn't really no release as such. You'd create the track, you'd put it on a tape, and those tapes would just circulate around the hood. They would just circulate around the area, around the wider area, and that's how you got your, your recognition from those tapes. And isolated tracks. Because the concept of the mixtapes hadn't dropped at that point. It was about individual tracks. And so that was the first tune I remember making was with DJ S, to say a proper tune that I put out that people would hear. I think it came from like listening to Kiss FM tapes from New York, WBLS tapes, from New York, and listening to how they were formulating their shows. Because a lot of how we used to absorb radio was from tapes from there, so we used to listen to those tapes and we just try and structure it in a similar way that we heard it being structured, because that was how you used to, it was all emulation, even down to little things like a lot of the early MCs in Leicester rap with an American accent, because it hadn't been around long enough, and we hadn't had the bravery, let's say, to, create something that was purely UK. It was quite an American kind of cultural thing at that time. It was all pretty obviously, dominated by, US culture. So, that's how we kind of structured how we was going to put it together. So we made up our own jingles, and we tried to formulate our shows as we heard them, like that. Well, that's how I used to formulate my shows anyway, from that perspective. I don't know if I consciously noticed it, to be honest. I think because you got props for what your skill set was, so you got a little recognition from that. So way back in the day, I got props for being a beatboxer, because I was a decent beatboxer, and I got props for being a popper, because I was never really a good breaker. I was more about the body popping. So I got props for that, you know what I mean? And then when you're putting out little music here and there, and it's circulating around the hood, you get ghetto celeb status, let's say, so people in your area knew who you were from your works, And back then there was no internet like that, so if you knew about stuff, it's because you was out on the scene, You know what I mean? On the street, in the clubs, you know what I mean? On the roads, hearing these tunes, seeing, getting involved. So, I can't say I was, famous type vibe. It was never like that for me, you know what I mean? So I can't say that, you know, you kind of noticed it. You would, in Leicester that is. I would say though, it would make you think when you was out of town, you know what I mean? And you'd be in the club and people would be, yes, Wavey. I'm like, I don't know you, but respect still. You know what I mean? I've never met you before. How do you know my name? Type vibe. So yeah, I would probably put it down to that, but I can't say that I noticed anything like, people know who I am. I weren't really, most of us anyway, weren't really doing it for that reason. You know what I mean? We was doing it because we loved the art form. And that was the predominant reason why we was doing what we was doing. You know what I mean? Of course, when you're DJing and you know what I mean, you get to know, people get to know you from DJing, and you get little attention. You know what I mean? You know? You know what I mean? You're not going to, you know what I mean, shun the attention like that when you're 16, 17, 18 years old DJing. You know what I mean? You're going to have some fun, ain't you?